Alright guys, I have finally finished up what I think I'm going to conclude with my Springfield Prodigy. Now this is what you're looking at as far as it being pretty much completed for me. Now I'm going to go over my experience. I have about a little over, I want to say like 250 rounds through it, so not like 1,000 rounds or anything like that, and I'm still working on getting it up to snuff and getting a few more rounds through this gun before I fully call it absolutely complete. But so far, I'm going to give you guys my rundown on my experience and modification on this gun. So overall, I will say, like many Prodigy owners here on the YouTubes, I really haven't modified much to it. And I think that, are there things you can do? It's just like a Glock, right? You can get into the weeds with 2011s and 1911s and, really like modify them to your heart's content. But for me, I don't really think that there's actually too much that I genuinely wanted to change to this gun in the first place. So I haven't changed any internals. I did come pretty close to changing, it's on this side, the slide release or slide stop, however you'd like to call it. But a few things arose when I tried to do that. And first off, I may still actually end up doing that. It's just all of the places that I went to try to get one, they were out of stock. So I physically could not find an extended or enlarged slide release for this gun, unfortunately. And so there is that. But also too, I think there's a little bit of just training differences when it comes to 1911s. When it comes to them, broadly speaking, you are really designed to, or naturally supposed to, hit your slide release with your support hand. That being said, I do have long enough fingers that if I don't necessarily have to break my grip, but if I adjust my position just a little bit, I can pretty easily strike that slide release. So it's not a huge deal for me when the slide is locked back. I can still definitely reach, as you guys can see here, I can still reach that slide release and hit it pretty well. So not a huge deal for me, and so I may end up actually not going with an extended slide release, but only time will tell. And ultimately too, once again, availability has to be there. So far, all the websites I've checked, there was physically none available, so can't even buy one if I wanted to. So as far as modifications go, as you guys can probably tell, there is one thing I have done to it, and that is I added a red dot. Now, I initially added a Viper or Vortex Viper, and a lot of people were kind of confused as to why I added that. And personally, I will say I actually don't mind the Vortex Viper on this gun. I think it looks good, but that was a placeholder. It was partly due to the fact that the out-of-box, when you get this gun, you get like one red dot plate or footprint plate for this gun, and so the Vortex Viper just so happened to be the only red dot that I had in my collection that was also compatible with that sight. So I had to add the sight because that's all I had at the time, and of course then I ordered this new plate here, so you guys can hopefully see here. This is the new plate that I ordered, and I want to say it's like an A12B, and then that allowed me to add the Holosun 407K. Now the 407K is just one of the red dots that Holosun makes. I don't think it's anything too fancy. It was like around a $250, optic, nothing too crazy, but it works for me, and it's a functional red dot. And I wanted to see what Holosun was all about. A lot of people did talk about Holosun right, wrong, and indifferent. And I will say too, the 407 and 507s, for those watching this video, I read a lot of reviews about this little plate right here. This is where your battery is captured, and I heard a lot of people say that plate likes to run away. So I did, when I got this thing, first things first, back that screw out, put some blue Loctite on it, some 2404 I think is what it is, or no, 242, there we go, don't know what was in my brain, but 242 blue Loctite in there, and that so far has kept it just fine. Of course I'm gonna watch it, but definitely if you do end up with a 407 or a 507, watch this little plate here and make sure that you treat it accordingly. So anyways, as far as the dot goes, this is what it looks like on here. The 407 is a smaller micro red dot, which for me, I actually kind of feel a little bit mixed because the Vortex Viper is a bigger dot, still a micro red dot. But what I will say that I like, to the credit of the 407K, as you guys can see here, hopefully, is that it is truthfully about the same thickness as the slide, about the same thickness as the whole of the handgun. So it is a reasonably slim optic that still allows a good like view portal. I can still totally get a good view and a quick I can, find the dot pretty quickly in there and get on target. So for me, I don't mind it at all. I think it's just fine. So for me, I don't mind it at all. I think it's just fine, and at least it's a little bit smaller than I was anticipating, but overall pretty good. And I will say the cool thing about the 407 is it's a pretty well guarded dot in here, so it's almost like a holographic, but you do get a pretty good protection. So not quite the level of other like aim-point acros or enclosed dots, but it is also a fairly well guarded optic, and once again pretty darn slim. I believe the 507K is a little bit larger and beefier, but it is ultimately a pretty small dot. So anyways, no complaints there. It fits well with my holsters that are optics cut for it, and yeah, so no complaints overall on the optic or the firearm as a whole. Now, as far as shooting experience goes, once again, I do have about 250 rounds on it, and for me, I did have quite a few stoppages with this gun. So what I believe was really happening with the cycling and the action of it overall is that, or I got a lot of failures to go into battery, and so I think what was going on is the gun would cycle and go all the way back, but there was a lot of resistance going forward and cycling the next round. So what I ended up doing was taking, or going down to Lowe's and grabbing some wet dry sandpaper and taking the feed ramp. If I can show this, hopefully it will show up on camera. Well, I might have to use my trusty flashlight here, but hopefully you guys can see in there. Hopefully, well, let's see. So yeah, hopefully you guys can see that feed ramp in there. If not, no huge deal, but the feed ramp on most 1911s is pretty abrupt and pretty abrasive. So what I ended up doing was taking wet dry sandpaper and polishing that feed ramp up to 2000 grit, and so far it has been just fine. I've cycled it and ran it, and I haven't had any issues so far. So once again, we'll shoot it some more and see if it continues to have feed or reliability issues. But my opinion, and I think a lot of people going into the Prodigy know that there will be some hand fitting that still has to be done, and it's just one of those things where if you get a bulletproof one, great. If you don't, like I said, it's not like you have to tear the whole gun apart and take it to a gunsmith. I mean, technically you could take it to a gunsmith and have them polish a feed ramp as well, but you can also go to Lowe's or Home Depot, buy some wet dry sandpaper up to 2000 grit or so, and then polish it yourself. I mean, it really did not take me long. Probably took me about 45 minutes, if that, honestly, to polish it up. And like I said, what you're just going for is just a mere polish, and that just helps reduce the friction so that your rounds continue to cycle into the gun. Now, of course, another thing to note with 1911s as a whole is they are not dry guns. They don't like to be ran dry, and that really goes for 2011s, 1911s, and that goes for whether it's a Nighthawk, Staccato, and Springfield, or even things like Rock Island Armories. Like, no 1911 really loves to be ran dry, and if anyone tells you it does, they're probably either lying to you or they just really lucked out and got a great one. So either way though, there's really no two ways around it. Any 1911 or 2011, they're going to be running wet, so you guys will probably tell, this one's not dry at all, so it's definitely a little bit on the wetter side, and that's just the way you have to ultimately keep 1911s and 2011s. So not a huge deal for me. As far as the trigger goes, it is about a 5-pound trigger, but I don't really have any issues with the trigger. It's very clean, single stage, very little to no creep, and as far as the reset goes, it's audible. So you guys can hopefully hear that, and it's unfortunately, I wish the reset was a little bit faster, but not bad. And a lot of people that I've seen also have Prodigies on here. They'll usually trade out the trigger for a flat blade. For me, I don't mind the kind of rounded or half moon here. It works for me, no problem. So anyways, that is essentially kind of my build finish. There wasn't really anything that I planned to do that was too crazy. And as as far as it goes, it works perfectly fine for my needs. Once again, for me, it was kind of more like a duty styled gun where it's going to be, you know, I don't want to like doll it all up and have it all pretty, just to actually like use it or carry it and, you know, like thrash it around. So that was kind of my idea with it. As far as I will say shooting experience goes, when the gun, it does cycle, it does shoot incredibly well like most 2011s. You're dealing with a, you know, steel frame at the core. Of course, the hand grip or grip module is polymer, but you're still dealing with a steel frame, steel slide, steel barrel, steel guide rod, steel everything else. So incredibly flat shooting and very fast to like get follow-up shots. The gun realistically does not really move, which is cool because a lot of times with things like Glocks and stuff, we end up putting compensators and stuff on the end of the barrel to get it to sit flat. Whereas if you do choose to go with something like a 2011, sure, it is a little bit heavier, but it is also naturally going to sit flat. You don't need some, you know, muzzle brake or compensator to help force the gun to sit there. So anyways, lastly, we have the, you know, magazine holder slash holster. This is just my tier 1 concealed holster. Still not the largest fan of it, but it works okay. I will say one thing I dislike is the magazine holster itself. I really had to torque this screw down on this side to get it to have decent tension on the magazine, and even still it's not particularly great. So overall, I don't know if I would recommend, like I probably wouldn't recommend tier 1 concealed holsters, at least for my Prodigy or for other people's Prodigies. But at the same time too, unfortunately, if you're looking for like a sidecar rig, tier 1 concealed is like the only one out there that's offering a like legitimate sidecar rig for the Prodigy. So it's like, I don't really recommend it, but I also don't have a good alternative to offer. I really wish like T-Rex Arms made a holster for it. If they did, I would 100% recommend going to their sidecar, but this does work decently. I do like the bungee cord design. You know, it gives flex between, you know, your magazine holster and your holster for your firearm, but once again, not my favorite. So anyways, guys, hopefully you enjoyed the video. As always, God bless, and I'm out.